the A fund. So this morning, between 10 and 12, I was hoping to get through B, GA, and DB. So we're starting out on page 36.
Amber, can I have a moment for a second?
Sure.
I just feel that I need to set the stage a bit before we embark on this budget journey. I mean, I spent the weekend, hugging this budget book and talking to people about what I was learning from all this. And I quickly realized that most of the town residents don't fully understand all of the moving parts involved. Our reserve fund confused most people that I spoke to. So it seems that it needs a little explanation. I mean, most municipalities have a reserve fund that they use to balance their budgets. The Shelter Islands Reserve Fund has a balance, I don't know, about $2.5 million or so, both restricted and unrestricted. And most of that money came from the sale of the cell phone tower. Every year when
That's actually not quite true.
yeah, well, it comes from wherever it came from, but I mean, a lot of it did come from that, but well, every year when increased spending is set in the budget, we draw on the reserve fund to fill the gap between what we plan to take in tax revenue versus what we have set as our new spending. We control the spending and we can manipulate what the new tax increase will be by using the reserve fund. I mean, we control both sides of the equation. In short, it's all the reserve funds used to offset increased spending. Shelter Islands Reserve Fund is particularly interesting because its balance has held steady for the last few years. Why? Because we have been generating a surplus each year by what our estimate of expenses are versus what we think the revenues are going to be, and then raising taxes accordingly. I mean, a healthy reserve fund is not a bad thing. It's a cushion or rainy day fund. However, in a year where we are facing higher assessments, the inclusion of the cost of the library project in our tax bills, the increased budget at the school and the fire department, I mean, I don't know, it seems like we should be looking to deliver, the lowest tax increase possible, 0% if we can pull it, through less spending and lower year-end budget surplus. Finally, we can look to our neighbor, the town of Southampton, as a guide. They've implemented a publicly debated policy on their use of reserve funds based upon GASB guidelines, the Government Accounting Standards Board. They openly decided that their reserve fund should not be a mystery, and something that's used by the town board to minimize impact of continuous increased spending. And I couldn't find in our records a public stated policy that the board has about the use of the reserve funds. And if we don't have one, at some point we need to talk about implementing a public reserve fund policy. That's it. That's just what I wanted to say.
Okay. That's a good idea.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, you can pull Southampton. They've published their reserve fund policy. You can pull it. I can send it to everybody.
Yeah, if you could, that would save us all time.
Okay.
Thanks. All right. just to go, broadly through the pages, the MTA tax, as stated the other day, or last week, I guess it was, gone this year. Contingent, we always have a small part-town contingent. We may want to just look at increasing that a little bit, but on the other hand, we can always pull from fund balance if we have some weird expenditure in the B fund. Contractor license review board, small. Next page, 37, building department. Reed will be coming in to talk about the building department as well as the zoning department. He had put in requests for increases for himself and Brett. So he may come back in to advocate for those. Quite sure actually he will. And yeah, I think those are the bigger changes from department heads. Marshall, it's just a title for Reed to be able to do inspections of commercial properties to make sure that they're in compliance. They haven't done anything with the fire warden for years. We never really knew exactly what the fire warden did. It was a stipend for someone, but we think that those duties continue to be covered under the fire marshal in the building department. The same with the registrar of statistics. It wasn't something that was, they weren't having any expenses. I think actually,
Isn't that pulled into the clerk's office?
yeah, I was just about to say hasn't been utilized there. Page 38, zoning department, Reed will be coming in on that. Yeah, the only thing to, highlight is the zone, building and zoning, they do need to go to Association of Towns. We'll do a review of everybody that, categories and departments that went to Association of Towns last year. And as an overview, what I'm proposing this year. So we'll get into more details on that. The Zoning Board of Appeals, very little in the way of changes there. I think Bill Diorio had put in a bigger increase for everybody. I kept it at the 2.5%. Professional services, because we do have, that used to be represented by our in-house town attorney. That's no longer the case. We have outside legal counsel. So I've increased professional services there to reflect that. And we've also, there has been a lawsuit or two that had to be defended, some Article 78. So again, just prescriptively putting in money there to cover that expense. Planning board, we went from 5 members to 7 members last year. So you will see an increase in the 2025 adopted planning board members to this year's proposed. Again, professional services, trying to reflect. They've always had outside counsel, but just putting in something that looks more realistic. Like 2025, we had adopted 20,000 with lawsuits that went on this past year. We're at 61,000 through the end of August. So hopefully that will not continue. And also planning board had taken over wetlands. So if they're not defending themselves on wetlands, Article 78, they should not have the same professional service fees that they had this past year. But we should discuss whether or not we think going forward, will we want planning board to take over site plan review when we rewrite that code? When we rewrite the wetlands code, do we want planning board to take over the review of those? So just something to consider. And in both of ZBA and planning board, I've added a line, professional services to be reimbursed by applicant. So we've got professional services as an expenditure here, and then in the revenue section, you'll see a new category, professional services reimbursed, so that those are a wash. I just put in a figure just so we have something, but that will get adjusted throughout the year as actual professional services do come into play. Water Advisory Council, Andrew Chapman will come in to go over his requests. We have, just as an overview, water level monitoring. We have that contract, so we know what that dollar amount is. There's also an MRI for the saltwater intrusion, 20,000, as well as water testing. The MRI, we can discuss whether or not, and also the USGS 10-year baseline study. Is that something that we can fund out of WQI, or does it need to come from the taxpayer base? So he'll come in, we'll discuss those. I didn't think that if we couldn't use some outside funding for some of those, I didn't think that we could do all three initiatives this year without further discussion. So I had pulled the baseline study, but.
We just got the quote for the baseline study, and it's 240,000. So I'm gonna say no this year.
240,000?
That's what I read. I'll have to go back and read it
Okay.
again, but, so I'm thinking not this year. But that's just me.
Okay.
What was that?
Yeah.
It should be in your email. Let me look. That's the number I'm remembering, but.
And this is, what is,
The USGS 10-year baseline study, it's a repeat of a study that was done 10 years ago to assess water quality across the island. And let me see if I can find it. Sorry, my email's loading. It's been really slow.
yeah,
It came in yesterday, I believe. From Andrew? No, it's from USGS. Let's see.
and what have we put in for this so far? Water testing, $20,000?
So you're a little quiet, Benjamin.
Oh, what have we budgeted so far for this, which is now 200 and?
Well, it
whatever?
was 20,000 in Andrew's budget, and then I cut it to 0, just because I didn't think that we could do all
Okay,
the increase, because I was trying to hold things flat this year.
yikes.
Yeah, so it's a 4-year study, 1, 2, 3, 4 years. And it's about 70,000 a year,
Mhm.
240,000 or 199,000, depending on the path we choose. So if we go the path that does not include PFAS, then it's cheaper. But part of the point of doing it was to determine if PFAS is a problem on the island. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's between 200,000 and 240,000 it's a 4-year study. So we'd have to budget like 70,000 a year.
Who did that go to?
I'll forward it to everybody.
Okay.
It came to Joe and me and WAC, I guess. I'll forward it to the company.
Thank you. That'll be something to discuss.
Mm-hmm.
And has Andrew signed up for time yet?
Yeah,
Yeah.
the 29th.
What is the saltwater intrusion line for?
That's the study, the
USGS.
USGS, the MR,
Okay. So the well's free, but we're paying them on an annual basis for testing, is that?
No, that's for the saltwater intrusion study that they were gonna do years ago. That's
Oh, okay, a
That's the one that-
continuation
yeah,
of,
it's- yeah.
okay, I got you.
separate from the baseline study.
Wow.
Comprehensive Plan Advisory Committee, that I put in, we didn't spend this year's 100,000 because we haven't done the environmental. We will start to move along with the comp plan again. We've worked out some of the logistics on the software issues that we were having. And then it's just a matter of breaking out the time again to revisit that. So if we don't end up getting started with that or spending some of this money on the environmental and anything that we need, that money's being rolled over from the 2025 year to 2026. So it's showing up as an expense here, but it's actually being funded with the 2025 money. And that could change depending on how we end the year.
Okay.
Page 41, Conservation Advisory Council, Wetlands Application Consultant, and then benefits. The Conservation Advisory Committee, that's straightforward. Wetlands Consultant. These fees, the 13,000 that I put in, would be, will be billing back her fees on applications coming in going forward. But there are times where we do bring her in to weigh in on like the wetlands legislation. We're going to want her to attend some meetings and give us her thoughts on how to draft that. So that's not billable back to anybody. So I wanted to leave something in there so that we could use her for things that the town board requests her to take a look at.
Gotcha.
That helps the town. The benefits are the benefits, the retirement. I'm going back through with Barbara to go adjust for that new bill that we've gotten in. That was the prospective 2027 bill. And then page 42 are the revenues in the B fund. So we have the LIPA pilot payment, which is just a flat 2% increase. We've got building department revenues. I took a look at, where we are year to date and did some extrapolation. Reed weighed in, we talked about it. So we can go through those and see whether or not everyone's happy with those revenue estimates. Same with zoning board of revenues. You'll see the zoning fees themselves and then the ZBA consultant fees. So that was what I'd mentioned a few minutes ago. We've got the expenditure equaling the revenue. So you've got the 5,000 in ZBA, and down in planning board, you've got the 15,000 there. Wetlands permits. Guesstimate, it's hard to know, like we've got 8,000 so far through this year. We had a budget of 16,000 the year before, we had 17,000. So it's just those kinds of extrapolations. And when we get into October at some point, Shelby will close September, so we will have those numbers to take a look at to see if anything still holds. The bottom of page 43 is just the summary of expenditures and revenues for the B fund. Next is the DA fund, and it's broken down into the mechanics, and we have the detailed spreadsheet, which, that's right, we had talked about getting that highway spreadsheet into a more readable format.
I'm still fighting with that.
When we start to,
Yeah, even the one you sent me, it's still a teeny tiny one. Trying to blow it up, I try to, when I blow it up, it smears.
I was able to print a, let me say, if you look at it on online.
I was gonna do the 11 by 17, that's what it was.
That's what I did, yeah, the 11 by 17 worked. It's still small, but it does seem to.
All right. Print it out for 11.
But with respect to all salaries, we'll have the highway, that union, we'll get that spreadsheet printed out better for everyone. And so in the CD, something that's more readable.
I mean, it's tiny, but it's better.
I mean, I can read it. Yeah, it might be better online, but
Yeah,
looking at the Excel spreadsheet, as well as the non-union employee salaries. So should have the non-union ones, and if we can get that printed out in between this session and the afternoon session so that everybody has that as we start to go line by line to see where everybody lands.
What page are you on?
Page 45.
Yeah, okay, got it.
Brush and weeds, I think things were fairly flat there. Yeah, overall, that area just had a 2.3% increase, $11,000 overall. Snow, which is on page 46, Ken will be coming in to probably advocate for those lines. Historically, it's always been kept high by, higher in the event that we have a bad winter to cover whatever snow, overtime plowing is needed. But we haven't had a bad winter, so last year I cut it from 50,000 to 32,000. This year, since we didn't spend any, 16,000. The same with the snow, the salt and the sand. And that is one area, Benjamin, you talked about contracts. Ken can talk about the salt contract, because he did, at the beginning of the year, bring in some of the salt, so we have it on hand in the case of a storm. But he'll speak to that. So I didn't cut that one as much
Okay.
as I wanted to.
So we have a certain inventory of salt and sand?
Yes.
Mhm.
Page 47, again, it's the benefits. It does get broken down by these different lines. I'm not sure why historically we've had these different categories. I think some of it may have to do with some reimbursements that we may be able to get, especially on the snow. So I think that's why we've always broken it down. And maybe also for some FEMA, if we ever have bad storms, FEMA will reimburse some of the benefits. And on the capital equipment, just the,
I mean, with recent budget cuts, are we sure about that? Or, I mean, I just have no idea. I mean, FEMA's budget is certainly under, let's call it review.
we're not planning, I don't think we have much when we get to the revenue side of what we expect to come in. It's just a matter of why we have all of these benefit categories, whereas in the A fund, we just consolidate so that we have regular retirement and police retirement, because they are two different systems. But then we have one line for Social Security, one line for workers' comp. We break it down in the DA fund into the different types of work categories.
Okay.
So somewhere in the back of my mind, I have that it was FEMA related, that we had this level of detail, even though it's a pain from a budgeting point of view.
Got it.
Yeah, the capital equipment shall be,
Just the final payment for the hook lift truck.
that's reflected in the capital budget. It just gets paid.
Yeah.
The
And it's reflected on the cover sheet because it's from the reserve. So it doesn't impact the budget.
Okay, so that's the 61,802. Yes.
That's the final payment, 61,802.
Yep.
And okay.
Yeah, we'll go through the equipment reserve fund because we wanted to pick up the request by Ken for the walking floor trailer.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
DA revenues,
So this, if we go forward with the walking floor trailer, this number then will change.
yes. But again, it would come from the equipment reserve fund. So on the cover sheet, that number would be increased to reflect the payment,
Okay. So, okay.
unless we opted to not spend from the equipment reserve fund and take it from taxpayer dollars. But we have the reserve fund for a reason, to smooth.
So how does that get reflected here? So the expense shows up here, but
So then if you go to the cover page, which is page 4,
mhm.
you'll see there's a column that says less fund balance and appropriated reserves.
Yep.
Slide on down to highway DA, and you'll see that 61,802.
Mm-hmm.
And anytime that column or the transfers from other funds and capital projects, if you look over in the bottom left-hand corner, we have the details of what those various polls are.
Okay. Okay.
The DA revenues, you've got the 110,000, which is capital reserve equipment rental. So in the A fund, you have an expenditure that funds the capital reserve. And then you've got the 110 here, which just showing that it's transferred into the reserves, but then that money goes into the balance sheet account. So it doesn't get included as revenues. But we just need to reflect for accounting purposes that money. And then we've got Suffolk County snow and ice reimbursement. As you can see, we've only got like 3,000 there. We've got New York State aid, snow and ice, 17,000. So those are the only sort of reoccurring grants that we have coming in. So if we did have a major storm, the FEMA money would get added in. It's not budgeted for, though.
Okay.
And then we've got interest on the checking account and the class accounts. And then there's miscellaneous revenue, CPF, for CPF, the stewardship of the properties. When the highway crew takes care of the properties, then there's a reimbursement made from CPF back into this fund to cover some of the costs. Page 49 is just a summary of the expenditures and revenues. And then DB fund. This is DB fund, it's roads, and it's a portion that Deering Harbor is not responsible for because they're a village, so they don't participate in this section.
But what does High-Low Shores and the Heights?
The Heights maintains their own roads. And then there is a state road going through there, but the village as a municipality, I mean, the Heights does pay a fund taxes.
Mm-hmm.
But
Got
the
it.
village of Daring Harbor, because they're their own municipality and they maintain their own roads, they pay their own taxes towards their roads. And then they don't pay for these. And I think that pretty much things were pretty stable. Yeah. So it only took us half an hour.
Hmm?
This really goes to show that the lion's share of governmental spending is in the A fund. We do have the capital projects and equipment page in here.
So what caused the difference between the 50,000 that was adopted and the 15,000 that was actually transferred?
What page are you
Where?
on?
52. Capital equipment.
So that was for Ram Island, for road raising for Ram Island. What was it, the survey? So 15,000 was all that was spent.
Okay.
And then we,
And then this year, Joe is using a little bit of that for West Neck.
yes, and actually that either purchase order or invoice just came through. I signed something last week.
Yeah, I think
So
that was
that'll
another
get-
like 8.
Yeah, so that'll get reflected, but that money was set aside in capital.
So the $30,000 surplus then goes to the reserve fund?
Well, no, it's continuing to stay in the capital fund until it gets spent. So the project continued on this year, and then if we do end up having, if that's, like, once the project's done, I don't know where it will land. Joe may be able to speak to that better. Like where the consultant is on that, then whether or not that will just go back into the reserve, capital reserve fund, or if it will be used to fund a partial of the next stage of trying to figure out what to do with road raising.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So there was survey work done, but then there would need to be design work that would have to be done as well.
Mhm.
But let's highlight that Joe covers that when he comes in. So in the capital improvement plan, what's in there right now is the 50,000 upgrade to the police radios, and that would complete the project. That would be paid for with appropriations, and then you see the hook lift truck, the final payment, and that's coming out of the reserves. And then I realized this morning, going through the books, that we hadn't printed out the CPF and the WQI, which are their own pages. So we'll have those for you this afternoon, as well as the salary schedules. And we have Bethany coming in at 1. And what I'd like to do right now is, rather than just starting to plow ahead, is just take a little bit of a break. As I was going down the stairs this morning, before leaving the house to come here, I took a tumble down the stairs. And so I'm like all achy and I need to take some Tylenol or something. Just not feeling up to snuff. So
Oh.
if we can take a break and reconvene at 1 o'clock, that would be good. Sounds like a plan. Yeah.
Oh, sounds like a very good plan.
Yeah. 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 1 Tylenol didn't cut it. I need more.
And feel better. That's
Yeah.
terrible.
Yeah, no. Just gonna have bruises. All right, so that'll be it, and we will reconvene at 1 o'clock.
Is anyone else coming today? Wait, I'm sorry. Liz is coming in 3 to 4.
Oh, 3 to 4, Liz.
Just confirmed with her.
Yeah, that's right.
So I'm sorry, what's the agenda for this afternoon? What's happening?
So Bethany's coming in from 1 to 2,
Two,
or,
yeah.
however long we need her. So we'll go over all of the rec department things to start with. And then Liz is coming in to talk about community housing from, 3 o'clock. So in between 2 and 3, we can start to go through the town board, is the first section to go through. So we can just go through more of the details, questions people have. If there's any revisits, just go through. If you're good with the supervisor tentative, just so that Shelby can start to fill in the town board column. If there's questions and things that, like what we've done historically, is we go through and it's like, okay, yes, we're all good with not raising councilman salaries this year. So then Shelby can start to fill in. If there's a question about, Association of Towns, we don't want to make a decision on that yet, then she won't fill in that line. We'll just highlight that there's an open question, whatever needs to be researched or thought about, revisited. We can go back and do that. Thanks. So we'll just plow through and then skip over, like we can go through justice court because it was said that we didn't need them to come in. But then when we get to Probably Highway, we're going to wait, we will skip over, well, actually assessors, do his, oh no, we said assessors don't need to come in, Anne Marie doesn't need to come in.
We
Town
can
clerk,
go through them, and
Yeah.
if we have questions
Oh,
for you, we
yes.
can always ask.
Oh,
them.
you know, we'll go through them, but
Yeah.
I was just looking for one, like Amber, I don't know if you've scheduled yourself. but-
No, I was gonna discuss it today, but I'd rather wait till I have like quotes and stuff.
Right, so then we would skip over town clerk if we, get that far. And just keep going until, like, we want Phil to come in. Do we have a time for Joe yet?
10 o'clock, Tuesday the 23rd.
Okay, in between.
He's in between Kelly.
Between Kelly and Ken, okay. So depending on how fast we get through some of these this afternoon. We'll just keep plowing along.
Yeah.
Andrew Chapman was coming in on the 29th.
29th at 11, after Reed.
All right, we'll see everybody back at 1 o'clock.
Okey dokey.